Even my 200th podcast episode celebration I had this year was like almost like 3 days worth of promotion, almost like no planning. But we still got almost 30 people there. As I said, I've gotten to the point where like getting pretty solid at throwing in-person events here locally. Haven't done anything major yet, but it definitely helped me along the way. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Walks of Wealth podcast. If you're tuning in on YouTube or any of the podcast directories, make sure to do yourself one teeny tiny little favor and make sure to give us a follow, because I don't want you to miss out on any of the amazing episodes I got coming out this year. Without further ado, I got another solo series coming up. If you've been tuning on with the podcast, you know that I just finished my conference series. I've been going to a lot of conferences over the past 2.5-ish years or so, and they've really helped me go, develop into the person that I am today. But another part is throwing my own events. I haven't thrown any conferences per se, but I've been throwing events for almost 2 years now, year and a half now. And it definitely helped. One, it gave me a lot of skills that I didn't never had before, like managing and putting together an event. Also, it gave me a lot of credibility and social proof. And three, they're also fun to do. Like, it's a lot of work and stress, but throwing events is something that I've been doing now. And like my last few events, man, I haven't been missing, man. I've been consistently hitting. Even my 200th podcast episode celebration I had this year was like almost like 3 days worth of promotion, almost like no planning really, and still got almost 30 people there. It's like, as I said, I've gotten to the point where like I'm getting pretty solid at throwing in-person events here locally. Haven't done anything major yet, but it definitely helped me along the way. So this solo series that I'm starting now is I'm going to be covering how I got into the events game, how I got started throwing events, how I threw my first events, and I'm going to be covering all the events I've thrown since then and kind of just take you along this journey. And we're going to start right with the first one. So this is back in late quarter 4, December 2022. Yeah, quarter 4, 2022. My boy Guelory, he threw an event over in Norwalk, which is about a town over from where I live, or a couple towns over from where I live. And so I went to this event, and it was super dope. I think it was on a Saturday morning up until like early afternoon, if I'm not mistaken. He had some speakers, and then he had one guy that was his mentor at the time speak at the end virtually. And I was like, bro, like, this is dope. We probably had like 40, 50 people at that event. I'm like, yo, bro, like, this is dope. So I'm talking to him at the end, like, yo, like, this is dope. I want to like get into the events game. And my boy Brandon, who's a public speaking coach, he's been on the podcast a couple times. He also throws a lot of events, and he's been throwing events for years now. So I was like, all right, bet. I got all this motivation and all this inspiration. Let me hit up Brandon and be like, yo, can you help me out with throwing an event? Like, I don't want to throw one just yet, but I just want to pick your brain. And so me and Brandon ended up scheduling a call. I hopped on a call with Brandon, and I started asking him some questions. And I remember this like it was yesterday. I was at my friend's house, and I'm on the phone with Brandon, asking him like, "Hey, how do you get into throwing events? Like, what do you recommend? What do you suggest? Yada yada yada." And he ended up, we were having this conversation, and I don't remember exactly what I asked or how the conversation went. I just remember towards the end, he started asking me like, because I wanted to do an in-person podcast interview. And that was the original idea for my event. Because as I said, I already had a podcast. By that time, I probably already had 50 episodes out, maybe like closer to 40 episodes out. So it's already, being consistent with the podcast. This is around the time where I decided to go all in on the podcast and start taking the podcast seriously. And so it was just like perfect timing with everything, how it all played out. So I'm like, all right, let me do an in-person podcast event. Podcasting is already up my wheelhouse. I can just interview a couple people locally, some local entrepreneurs, and get a audience in front of us, and boom, that'll be our thing. And so I'm answering all these questions for Brandon, and at the end he sends me via text this Canva image. He was like, yo John, if you don't post this tomorrow, I don't want anything to do with the event. And I'm like, damn, like I didn't want to throw an event. I just wanted to ask about, how to throw an event first, like when I'm ready. And he was like, nah, you got to post this tomorrow. I don't want nothing to do with it. And so it was him that I was going to interview, my friend Rob and another friend Carly, both of which have also helped on the podcast. But he had Rob and Carly on the flyer, and I didn't even asked Rob or Carly yet if they wanted to do it. So like I was just kind of like, I didn't even know what to do at the time, because he had two other people that I didn't even asked yet, and of course they're my friends, so they probably would have as long as they were available. But like he already had them on the fly, and he was like, post this. So I remember that next day, I ended up not posting it. I forgot what I did. I think I was doing some other stuff. I ended up forgetting about it, honestly. But the day after, so 2 days after our call, I ended up posting it. I had texted Rob and Carly, and they both said that they were down to do the in-person podcast interview with me. I ended up doing that. And in terms of finding a venue, me and Brandon were brainstorming, and I was like, "Yo, I'm an agent with KW still. My license is active, so I can use the office." He was like, "Okay, cool. Do they have like a venue that you can use in the office or a space?" I was like, "Yeah, they have a training room." That's like, boom. That was my training room was gonna be the venue. The parking at the KW office in Stanford is immaculate. There's like infinite parking spots. So I mean, I wasn't expecting to get that many people anyways, but I knew no one was gonna have an issue with parking. It's pretty easy to get to. So I was like, boom. So I'm not coming out of pocket there. And then I think I ended up getting a couple like glasses of bottles of wine or something like that, and maybe pizza. I forget if I brought food or not. If I did, it was probably pizza and wine. And that was the first event ever. I ended up hosting it 2 weeks later from the call from Brandon. So I said, me and Brandon hopped on a call. Boom. 2 weeks later, I hosted the event. All my invitations I did via text. So I was texting a bunch of people, and I got, I think in total maybe like 15 of us ended up showing up to that very first event, and that ended up being like the start of this whole like event space game that I've been doing. I've been hosting events, and it was really dope because it was a really good intimate group of people, all people which I knew already personally, and it was also a great way to showcase some of my friends that are also entrepreneurs and from the other local entrepreneurs and business owners. And so that ended up being the first event. It was a success. I didn't charge for tickets. I think it was free. Yeah, it was free to attend, and I just had people RSVP pretty much. And so that's how I ended up throwing the first event. Didn't come out of pocket anything aside from like the pizza and wine, which was maybe at max, maybe like $50 or something like that. Ended up getting 15 people and got some good social proof for that. I got some good story posts. I got some good photos that I posted. And so, as I said, like you get a lot of credibility throwing these events. And so that was the start of everything. That's how I hosted my first event. In the next part of this solo series, I'm going to cover how I threw my next event because it was a night and day difference. Like it definitely did a full, 180 from that very first event to the next event. So stay tuned for the next episode in the series. I'm going to be covering how I threw my 100th podcast episode. We had over 50 something people there. It was a great time. So I'm going to be covering how I did that in the next one.